In a small, quiet village, there lived an old woman named Agnes. She was a widow with no children, and she lived alone in a tiny, dark house at the edge of the village. But Agnes was no ordinary old woman. She was a powerful witch. Long ago, Agnes had used her dark magic to kill her own husband. Since then, she had become even more wicked. She hated to see people succeed or find happiness. Whenever she heard that someone was receiving blessings, she would use her witchcraft to block it. She destroyed people's destinies, stole their fortunes, and made sure they never prospered. Agnes was feared by everyone, though no one dared to accuse her. They only whispered about her in secret, warning each other to stay away from her. But no matter how much people feared her, they could not stop her evil deeds. The Witch's Judgment. One night, Agnes was summoned by her fellow witches to the dark forest, where they held their secret meetings. They formed a circle around her, their eyes glowing in the dim moonlight. One of the witches stepped forward and pointed at her. "Agnes," the witch said, her voice cold and firm, "your time has come. You will die soon." Agnes's heart pounded. She had seen many witches sentenced to death in the coven, but she never thought her time would come so soon. She fell to her knees and begged, "Please, sisters, do not take my life. Give me a task, any task, and I will do it. I am not ready to die." The witches whispered among themselves. After a moment, the leader spoke again. "We will give you one last chance, but the task will not be easy. If you complete it, you may live a few more years." Agnes nodded eagerly. "I will do anything. Tell me what I must do." The terrible task. The leader of the witches smiled wickedly. "From now on, you must steal men's manliness for our sacrifices. You will disguise yourself as a beggar and sit by the roadside. Any man who gives you money will lose his manhood. His manliness will disappear and reappear inside a special bag in your house. When the bag is full, you will bring it to us." Agnes shivered at the thought, but quickly nodded. "I accept." The witches cackled with laughter. "Then go. Your task begins immediately." With that, the meeting ended, and Agnes found herself back in her home. The task was strange, but she had no choice. If she wanted to live, she had to do it. Agnes becomes a beggar. The next morning, Agnes dressed in old torn clothes. She covered her face with dirt and made herself look weak and helpless. Then she took an old wooden bowl and limped to the village market where many people passed by. She sat on the ground, stretched out her hand, and began to beg. "Please, kind sir, spare some coins for an old woman," she cried in a weak voice. Many men walked past her without stopping, but soon, one kind-hearted man took pity on her. He reached into his pocket and dropped a few coins into her bowl. The moment the money touched her hand, the man gasped. His eyes widened in shock as he felt something strange happening to his body. His legs trembled and he stumbled backward. What is happening to me?" he muttered in fear. Agnes gave him a wicked smile, but she said nothing. The man ran away, confused and terrified, not knowing that his manliness had disappeared forever. Back at Agnes' house, the magic bag hidden under her bed glowed softly. Inside, something new had appeared. Agnes peeked into the bag and smiled. "It has begun," she whispered to herself. And so Agnes continued her wicked mission, waiting for more men to fall into her trap. Agnes sat by the roadside every day, dressed in her ragged clothes, looking weak and helpless. With her wooden bowl in hand, she begged for money from the men passing by. "Please, kind sir, have mercy on an old woman," she would cry, stretching out her wrinkled hands. Many men felt sorry for her. Some gave her coins, while others dropped food or small gifts into her bowl. But what they didn't know was that the moment they gave her money, they had sealed their fate. One by one, the men who helped Agnes began to notice something strange happening to them. They felt weaker, confused, and somehow empty. Then, to their horror, they realized that their manhood was gone. Panic spread through the village as more men suffered the same mysterious fate. They searched desperately for answers. Some went to healers, others sought help from the village elders, but no one could explain what was happening. Worst of all, none of them could remember when or how it had happened. It was as if their manhood had vanished into thin air. But Agnes knew exactly where it was, the secret bag of manhood. Back at her house, hidden beneath her old, creaky bed, was a strange bag, one that only she could see glowing in the dark. Every night, she would check inside, smiling wickedly as she saw the contents growing. The bag was filling up quickly, just as the witches had commanded. But Agnes was careful. She knew she couldn't just walk through the village carrying a bag full of stolen manhood. People might get suspicious, so she came up with a clever plan. Each time the bag was full, she would disguise herself as a mad old woman. She smeared dirt on her face, tangled her hair, and walked barefoot, muttering nonsense to herself. She even stuffed her bag with dry leaves and dead animal bones to make it look like she was carrying trash. The villagers pitied her. "Poor old woman," they would say. "She has lost her mind." Nobody dared to stop her. Some thought she was carrying a dead animal. Others believed she was just a crazy woman wandering around. Agnes had fooled them all. Journey to the dark forest. Late at night, when the village was quiet, Agnes would sneak out of her house and head toward the dark forest. She walked slowly, dragging her heavy bag behind her, whispering strange words under her breath. The trees swayed as she entered the forbidden part of the forest, the place where no villager dared to go. Owls hooted, the wind howled, and strange shadows moved in the darkness. But Agnes was not afraid. At the center of the forest, deep in the witches' meeting place, the other witches were waiting. Their eyes glowed like burning coals as they watched Agnes approach. She placed the bag on the ground and knelt before them. "The bag is full," she said, her voice shaking with excitement. The witches circled the bag and chanted in strange voices. The air grew cold, and a dark mist rose from the ground. Then one of the witches lifted the bag and opened it. A deep, eerie laugh echoed through the forest. "You have done well, Agnes," the leader of the witches said. "You have proven your loyalty. You may live, for now." Agnes let out a sigh of relief. She had bought herself more time. But she knew her task was far from over. The witches would soon demand more, and she had no choice but to continue. The village grows, fearful days turned into weeks, and the strange sickness of the village men continued. More and more of them suffered the same fate, and the village was in turmoil. "We must find the cause of this curse," the village chief declared. "Something evil is happening among us." He ordered a gathering of the elders, warriors, and wise men to find the answer. Some suspected a powerful curse, while others whispered about dark spirits roaming the land. But no one thought of Agnes, the quiet old widow who sat by the road every day. And so, while the village searched for answers, Agnes continued her work, stealing more and more manhood, carrying her wicked bag to the forest, and securing her life, one sacrifice at a time. But how long could she keep her secret? Agnes, the Wicked Witch, final part. The village was in chaos. The men were restless, confused, and afraid. More and more of them had lost their manliness without any explanation. It had started with just a few cases, but now it had become a terrible mystery, affecting almost every household. One evening, the village chief called for an emergency meeting. The men gathered in the village square, their faces filled with worry and frustration. The elders, warriors, and wise men sat in a circle, trying to understand what was happening. "This is not natural," one of the elders said. "Something evil is among us." "How can so many men lose such a vital part of their body without any trace?" another man asked, shaking his head. "We must find the cause before every man in this village is affected," the chief declared. The men nodded in agreement. They vowed to be more careful, to watch out for any suspicious activity, and to investigate every possible cause of the strange affliction. But still, no one suspected Agnes. Agnes's last mission. One dark night, Agnes prepared for another journey to the witch's coven. The bag under her bed was now full, heavy with the stolen manliness of the village men. She wore her disguise as usual, looking like a mad old woman. As she stepped onto the road, she muttered to herself, pretending to be lost in her own world. She was confident, as always, that no one would stop her. But this night was different. A group of young men had been secretly watching the village for anything unusual. They had grown suspicious of the strange old woman who always carried a big bag into the forest. They had seen her many times, walking alone in the dead of night, dragging the heavy sack behind her. Tonight, they decided to follow her. Agnes walked slowly, unaware that she was being watched. Just as she was about to enter the dark forest, the men rushed out and blocked her path. "Old woman, stop right there," one of them commanded. Agnes froze. Fear gripped her heart. She had never been stopped before. What "What do you want from me?" she stammered, trying to act confused. "Drop the bag," another man ordered. "We want to see what you are carrying." Agnes tightened her grip on the sack. "It's just rubbish, just old things I pick from the road," she said, her voice shaking. "Open it," one of the warriors barked. Agnes looked around, searching for an escape, but there was none. She had no choice. With trembling hands, she slowly untied the sack. As soon as she opened it, the men gasped in horror. Their eyes widened in shock. Inside the bag were strange, fleshy objects, the missing manliness of the village men. Agnes fell to her knees and began to weep. "Please, forgive me," she cried. "I was forced to do this. The witches commanded me." But before she could finish her confession, a dark wind blew through the air. The trees swayed violently. A strange force gripped Agnes, and before the men's very eyes she collapsed and died instantly. The witches had struck her down, ensuring she would never reveal their secrets. Justice is served. The men stood in silence, staring at Agnes's lifeless body. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the village chief who had joined them stepped forward. "This woman was responsible for our suffering," he said. "But now, justice has been served." The men nodded in agreement. There was no need for a burial. Agnes did not deserve the honor of resting in the village. They carried her body deep into the evil forest and left it there, where wild animals would feast on her remains. As they walked back to the village, there was a sense of relief in the air. The curse had been broken. The village would heal. But they would never forget what had happened. Moral lessons from the story. 1. Evil will never go unpunished. No matter how long it takes, the wicked will always meet their downfall. 2. Greed and wickedness lead to destruction. Agnes chose to harm innocent people for her own gain, and in the end, she lost everything. 3. Truth will always come to light. No matter how well a person hides their evil deeds, one day they will be exposed. 4. Be careful who you trust. Sometimes the people causing our problems are the ones we least suspect. 5. Good always triumphs over evil. No matter how powerful wickedness may seem, justice will always prevail. Thank you so much for watching this story. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you liked this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of my upcoming stories. More exciting and thrilling folk tales are on the way, so stay tuned.